Welcome to part 2 of Glyphs. So let's pick it up right where we left off. There is another glyph I'd like to show you. Very simple, and the picture tells you why it drew my attention, if nothing else. As they say, hindsight's 20/20, and I wish I had a wider view of this, because you can see down in the corner there may be a little more to it, but it is what it is. And I don't think something falls on the ground tucked back in a pocket like that, like in the center. So there it is. So I'm trying to figure out who, what, and why, and I wasn't getting it, and I started seeing these glyphs showing up leaning against the structures. Now they knew I was always looking at the structures when I went by, because they were always watching me. So this first one is their first, in hindsight, I think I figured it out, but this is the first one I found, and just look at the timestamps, and it'll tell you something. The very first glyph that I found in the trail. Let's say that's saying stick people. But look at the rest of it. This business down here, to me, it stands out in the picture as much as when I was looking at it. And that seems to mean something. Well, at this point, I don't have a lot of clue. It's starting to leak through. I'm starting to see the pattern. While working on this video, I said I had pictures that I hadn't found. Well, I found them, so let's take a look. Okay, so look at the timestamp on this. You can see it's from early spring. Look at the white spot. You might recognize that stick from several months in the future. Now look at the angles. All the structures seem to be in a half arc where the lines of sight show you where we do things. I don't have a very big backyard because I want to be way off the road, which we are. You can look at the blue arrows. You can see up the driveway. You can see around the cars. You can see the barn door, back door of the barn, wide open. That's the blue square. Now, imagine that you move 30 feet to the right, and you'd be looking from the aspect of that red arrow right up the side of the house. You'd be able to see over in front of the barn. And if you went to the left, you'd be able to see the deck in front of the porch, the door. The sight lines have to do with where those structures are. And I believe those structures are built just to break up their silhouettes so they feel more confident in being hidden. So I learned something from the Native American culture, and that is showing your weapon hand or right hand shows that there's no weapon in it, and kind of a sign of peace. I had been making signs all along using my right hand. When I felt that term, I had to come up with observation pressure. Simply means that you can feel them watching you. Back to this shot. You can see I've outlined those couple things that were really sticking out to me besides the A. I gave it a lot of consideration, and actually I had to go forward before I could figure out what this meant. Since I already been forward for the purposes of this video, I'll just start talking about this. I believe that this is saying that there is a female and a male involved in this communication effort. The female's pretty obvious, the purple, and then you look at that, the yellow lined one, that says male to me, if I'm on the right track. I talk about humanizing the Squatch's actions, how misleading or even dangerous that can be, and I believe that. But in this case, I think that they were humanizing so that I could understand and consider the level of intelligence that would require. You know, we know they're self-aware. We know that, you know, we've had all kind of reports. One that sticks in my mind is somebody I respect was tracking across an open field in the snow, and in the middle of the field, the footprints stopped. Well, you may think that, oh, well, they opened a portal and went somewhere. Well, I'm not there. You know, again, I'm from Missouri. You got to show me. What this person thought, and I agreed with, was that they had backtracked to the trees and swung up into a tree and went somewhere else. So now we have to back up to the glyph before. I believe that the red in this glyph indicates a male, and the blue indicates a female. Further, if you look at the purple circled spot, the reason I think these glyphs, if the female's idea, is because in this glyph, you can see it, her leg, as represented by the glyph, is over top of his leg. To me, that suggests that it was her idea. Now, I could have that backwards. Maybe it's the one in back that is the important one, the one whose idea it was. And still, it would fit. It just would be the male's idea. So why do I think the red one's a male? Right here. Simple, direct, unmistakable. So now we're ready to jump past both these glyphs. October 23rd, 2016. I went out back, broad daylight, sat at the foot of my favorite oak tree overlooking the hollow. And on the other side, I was scanning with a pair of 10 by 50 wide-angle Bushnells, just looking for anomalies, looking in dark spots, looking for lines that didn't fit. And while I was sitting there, I hadn't been there long, and I was scanning a log almost straight in front of me. And I saw a anomaly over top of a log that just looked too smooth, and it just didn't fit the shadows and stuff. So I thought to myself, have patience for a minute and keep watching. So I did. And pretty soon, that anomaly started to raise up until a pair of eyes came over the log and then very slowly went back down. And in a couple minutes, you know, I'm still watching, up it came again. And then at that point, then he went ahead and just sat up, and I could see, you know, about what you're seeing on the screen right now of him. And I wrote a manuscript at the behest of friends, which has never been published and probably never will since I'm a Poe boy. But I described what I saw in there. Basically, I took this to be a young male, 8 to 10 years old. I threw down my binoculars and I raised my empty weapon hand to him to show that I had no weapons and I meant him no harm. And I figured he could understand that, you know. And when I got my binos back on the spot, he had either laid down or took off. I think he laid back down. So I kept scanning down the slope, and I got about halfway to the bottom, and there was a female, and she wasn't even trying to hide. She was sitting up from behind bushes and just looking at me just like I'm looking at you, you know, took a good long look. She laid down, or anyway, disappeared out of sight. And I scanned on down. I didn't see anything, but I was hearing a knocking, wood noise. Um, there was something down there making noise, and I couldn't find it. So I started up the other bank, the side I'm on, and I didn't see anything like that. And the noise was telling me I'd passed it. So I went scanning back, and it took a couple scans up and down both banks, but finally I come back across that log at the bottom, and there was a baby, uh, just like this, looking, had it. I could see its hand laying on top of the log, uh, like that. I could see its fingers, and it did the same thing, man. Give me a good long look, and then laid back down. And that one looked like it was, I'd say, between, after having kids and grandkids, I'd say 1 to 3 years old. The female looked like she was maybe 6 to 8. And she is definitely a female. I had no doubt about it. They all had the baby did not have much of a conical head. It was pretty rounded. From what I saw, it looked like the females hadn't, like the cone is something that develops with maturity. Because it was there, but it wasn't as prevalent as the older one. Also, I noticed that her hair looked like it was parted in the middle and feathered, which I know they ain't got a pair of scissors, and I doubt they got Sasquatch Barber College. So, but that's what it looked like, and I had no doubt. If you care to read the written description, I'll post it on my Facebook page, Wahonding Valley Bigfoot Conservancy, under Files. Here's 2 pictures of, I believe, those same glyphs modified after the juveniles showed themselves to me. At any rate, same ones modified or new altogether, I think I've learned something else. Notice the difference by the direction observed. Let's break one down. I have noticed right-hand overhead hooks. Back to the last pre-sighting set. I said blue represented a female, that there is clearly a right hook. Notice the hook is the same branch that lower down symbolizes the left leg. Back to this one. Looks like 2 females represented. Now look at this connection. This element is really one stick bent parallel, yet the right hand hook is there. Look at this element. Same as the previous set. Overhand right hook. The whole says 2 females to me. Going a step further, I get a difference in sizes. One younger, one older. If you think about these natural people, how close they are connected to the earth, then size representing age makes sense. A step further. Into a more spiritual realm, I see connections that suggest nurturing. So this glyph says to me, an older female nurturing or protecting a younger. There are a couple of small things that could be part of this, which would change the message, but not a lot. Here and here. Now let me pull on yours for a second. Our written language has silent letters. Is it a far-fetched idea to think that these would be somewhat of an equivalent, depending on use? There's another element here, the straight stick. It has to be there. From this angle, it creates the top half of one character. Notice this curve and how the straight stick rises past the hook. When I look at this, I get a feeling of being nurtured. I wondered why I would feel such a thing, and I think it's because I relate the curving around the smaller, thinner stick as protecting. I'm feeling very strongly at this point that the Sasquatch Society is mainly matriarchal in composition. It's just one of the little things that has popped out to me, and it fits with everything I've been saying. During this series, you may recall that I said there was a couple of flat glyphs that I thought I had pictures of but couldn't find. Well, when I found the missing pictures, I also found another glyph laying flat. Let's check it out. The first thing I did was spin the picture around. I don't remember this one. There's no pine needles, so it's not in my pine grove, which leaves out back or in the east leg. I'd gone to another research area later that day. I had to look at the time to make sure that it was at home. I follow the sun. I'll do things in a sunwise or clockwise direction, including travel trails. I was able to surmise that it must have been around the west end of the line of structures behind the chicken coop somewhere. I started looking more closely. I saw this reminiscent of the right-handed A's. Then this. Working up, I found all these other possible elements. Too many, getting too small, too much possible chance. I began to think that this wasn't intended for humans. Could this be a representation of a tribe intended for other squatches? It could say, the V, Alpha, 2 older sons, and up top, several females of varying ages. Look at the thickness of the sticks. Check this out. Humans. Could this possibly refer to myself and or my family? The connections are there if you want to look for them. Logic dictates to me that I'm reaching with the smaller connections. Yet consider, highly intelligent, no technology, dimensional thinking, and time. Time. This isn't the first I've seen that would require more time than we would take with something. The point is, we don't know. There's one last aspect of this particular glyph. Any of the V-type glyphs on the ground around here seems to point the wide end at the common area. Here the common area is between 1.5 mile away over the main hollow and the secondary hollow. This is one of at least 2 flat V glyphs that point out the common area. There's a third flat V glyph over in that corner. Its size makes it very different. It also has different content in it. These 2 smaller ones point north. That one in that corner indicates east. I wonder if the size is an indication that there's a big common area farther away in the direction indicated, like maybe the parent tribe of this clan. More field work is needed. Several of the flat glyphs in this video are the same as ones other people are documenting in other states, far enough away to cast doubt on any physical connections. Are these glyphs species-wide? I think they are. That's become a real interest of mine. Let's look a little closer. Here's some history. I've noted changes over time. There have been times when this thing has been completely gone with no trace. There have been times that it's been a V. In the beginning, I was a little suspicious of either human interference or even complete human design. The reason for this is this bottle. I still retain that suspicion to a degree. Time is making me a believer, though. Still, Squatches aren't the only opportunists in the forest. It occurs to me my poaching neighbors could have had a hand. This crossbar might make a good backrest. What doesn't fit is it's not anchored. Lean on it and it's going to move. Also, it's 10 times longer than a person would need. To begin, it's usually an A, but I've found it sectioned with sticks inside the sections. As I've been saying, I believe that A figure means stick people, or whatever they call themselves. We find it in many of the formations. Because I wanted to do some more research on that corner, I went out a couple days after deer season to see what might be laying out there or not laying out there, and here's what I found. As you can see, there's just not much laying there. There's material if you wanted to build a glyph or some such structure, but there's nothing there that was really catching my eye, and nothing that I was feeling was part of anything purposeful. And as I looked around, I started backing up and looking up. So out there, I learned to always look at the trees, look up in the trees. And really, I was finding some curious stuff, but that's about it. So what's not finding anything out there mean? Well, it could mean that they never left. The season was short this year. I didn't hear any shooting anywhere around my property, around the edges. In the past, after a day or so, they have left, and that's when I might find that glyph out there in that corner. But this year, no glyph and no shooting that I heard. So that brings me to the last section of this series, and it's about tree glyphs. So let's get into that. There were several areas that I went squatching. At one, I found this beside the road, about 12 feet off the ground. And the way the ground laid, you really even couldn't get to it with a ladder. It stuck out like a sore thumb. It was a what the hell moment where the world comes to a screeching halt as your mind struggles to comprehend its sin. I knew it for what it was as soon as I saw it. The second one is almost 3 hours from home. And it looks like this. The third one is at home. Let's start there. Carrie from Bigfoot Odyssey was due here to film in 2 weeks. Our family decided to go camping at Salt Fork State Park. We came back on Memorial Day. With plenty of daylight left, we decided to carry on with the festivities. I was sitting in a chair in the yard by the drive, facing the backwoods, while my son was changing oil in my wife's vehicle, and we were all hanging around there. We had a canopy up and putting food out. I looked towards the woods and saw this immediately. I knew what it was when I saw it. It was not there when we left. This trip was probably the first time in probably many years that no people or dogs or other animals had been there for a couple days. Now it's film day. Carrie and crew arrive. We meet in the drive and make introductions. Carrie excused himself and wandered off out back. I gave him an appropriate amount of time, and I went back. He was standing at the edge of the wood line, looking into the woods. He told me he had heard bipedal footsteps running off, but hadn't seen anything. He stepped toward me and stopped. He looked down and asked, "Did you put this here?" I looked down, and between us, laying on the ground, was that damn tic-tac-toe thing out of the tree. I looked up, and we were standing right under where it was at. I couldn't tell you when it got knocked down. I had been paying attention to it after initial investigation and pictures. I later found one much smaller, I mean like 3 times smaller, out where if you go east from the house and cross the creek to head out in the east leg, it was in a tree around there. The light in this picture doesn't do justice to the way the light fell on it when I first saw it. When I first saw it, this part stuck out. The rest of it was shaded. The shaded area is back in the tree line while the glyph branches are out in the sun. This idea of placement using light is prevalent in tree glyphs. I found it furthers my theory of their dimensional awareness. Looking at the glyph itself, I'm seeing a grid like a tic-tac-toe board. Looking at the top section, I see an A that I believe to be a species identifier. Remember I talked about how I came up with a clan name for them and everything in part 1. At the very least, it's an often repeated building element. There are also separated building elements, in this case, Ys. Another thing are the crossbars. And if you look at the pictures from that corner, you'll see that that big glyph has 2 crossbars, and there's at times sticks placed inside them, okay, with message of some type. I don't believe that these are made for humans. I believe they're made for at least their own species. Let's look at the second one I found. You can get a better idea of how the light affects visibility. The Properties tab is telling me that this was taken 4/21/2018, time 8:27 p.m. What caught my eye was the straight lines. And then at what else the light was showing. The more I looked, the more elements I found. Crossovers and unders, an X, and that same grid type pattern. Once again, a million connections, smaller and smaller. You can follow them down if you wish. Real quick, there's also a right-hand hooks and a possible A as well. This last one I had very limited time with. I found it along a trail. There was a solid wall of green head high beside me. The only other thing I could see was this above and behind it a ways. You can plainly see how the light caused it to glow, making it stand out. Yes, it looks like a creepy skeletal hand. I didn't take it that way though. I see it as a mystery. I will say that it was roughly south, not only when I took the picture, but also from our camp. There were several people, so we split up and took different areas. In the southeast, some sign was found. I had been north. I have no idea what it could possibly mean or show. Just that it seemed to me to stand out purposely. So we've reached the end of Glyphs Part 2. As usual, I'm finding I have more questions after making a video than I did when I was trying to answer them by making the video. This time I wrote them down, so depending on how this video goes over, I may do a follow-up and answer those questions. Hope someone gets something out of this. If nothing else, it should help you find claimed territory as you're hiking or driving down the road. Just watch the tree lines.